poof, 2 days, you can have a buyer's list just by using the crazy new invention called the computer. Wow. Damn, Logan, you're a genius. I don't think so because I've never been in Mensa, but damn, I'll take the compliment. So now that we've gotten as far as getting the file back from the skip tracing company, at this point you have 2 options to choose from. The super cheap option but taking things painstakingly slow is going to be to hand dial every single one of these people relentlessly until you get yourself your motivated seller. Now, if you think about it, if you wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning and make calls from 8 to 8 p.m. at night, you're super dedicated, number 1. But number 2, you're probably able to make, let's just say, 300 phone calls, maybe 400 if you're individually dialing all these numbers. Or option 2, and really what you have to think about is the extra $100 a month or $100 to $120 a month worth the speed in which you are able to call prospects, which could allow your time frame from your first deal being this far apart to this far apart because of the speed of dialing. So your choice is option 1, cheapest way, do it yourself, put some elbow grease in there and dial these phone numbers one by one by hand with your cell phone. That's option 1. Don't really cost you anything. Option 2 is get yourself an auto dialer. Now, if you're entry level, you just want to get things set up, a lot of times you can go with what we call Mojo. And you can look it up on YouTube. It's a pretty popular dialer, auto dialer for people in the real estate business. It's $99 a month for the single line dialer. And that'll get you up to about making 100 calls an hour if you use the Mojo dialer. Now, the biggest key that you have to remember when you're using this dialer is you need to message the customer service or follow the templates on how you upload your skip traced spreadsheet to make sure that it's in the appropriate format so that the dialer calls all the numbers that you have for your prospects. Because each prospect, when you skip trace it, is probably going to have 2 to 7, 10 different numbers depending on how many phone numbers are out there for that prospect. So make sure you check that. Now, if you want to spend an extra $20 a month, the dialer that we use is called Call Tools. I'll spell it out here, same thing with Mojo, calltools.com. And if you message my homie Chase over there, he'll hook you guys up. Just let him know that Logan Hand, Mogul in the Making, sent you his way. He'll probably give you a discount. So, Call Tools is what we use, and there is actually a formula that you have to use inside of Call Tools. Ask Chase about it or any of the customer service people about the format that you need to do in your spreadsheet in order to get those numbers all into one cell before you upload them. But if you're trying to do this the cheapest way and you still want to get a dialer, I would say Mojo is a great place to start until you've done several deals, and then maybe it's time to upgrade later. So here's what I can honestly tell you. Back in the day, I wish I would have gotten in dialer, even like Mojo, at a way sooner point in my operation than how long it took me, because basically we were taking so much longer to dial the numbers that need to be dialed, because getting a deal takes volume, and more volume. You have to dial thousands and thousands of these numbers before you get one good deal. So you have to keep that in mind. If you have to dial thousands of numbers by hand, yeah, maybe you get lucky, sure. But ultimately, it's probably going to take a lot of elbow grease, and it could take you weeks to get thousands of numbers done. and that's working 12-hour days. So I would suggest an auto dialer is probably the best $100 investment you can make in your real estate investment business. So definitely recommend. I would start out with Mojo Cells and rock it from there. All right, so what's next? What the fuck do you say to these people when you get them on the phone? Let's go there. All right, so what I tell people and the students that I've mentored before, and even what you'll find in my real estate investing wholesaling course that teaches you my entire business model that we're running today from A to Z, which you can always check out. I'll put that link in the bio if you want to know more other than what I'm teaching you right now. You can check that out. Super affordable, gives you everything from A to Z. Anyways, now, you get on the phone, you're talking to someone, you gotta know what to say. If you guys click the description below, I'll actually include the seller scripts that I use, which are relatively simple and handle a lot of different objections, but I'll give them to you for free. If you just click the link, you can use our own seller script as a thank you for watching this video. So, you call someone, right? Let's break this down. It's super simple. The first things you need to be thinking about is who is the person that you are talking to, and understand them and their mentality. First and foremost, you're calling people that are in pre-foreclosure. They are typically not the easiest people to deal with because there's tons of creditors, mortgage companies, they may not be paying some of their credit card bills. All sorts of people are calling them, likely to harass them about money or paying for something that they don't have. So, that's the person. The other thing you need to understand is the type of person that doesn't pay their mortgage for months on end pre-coronavirus. Let's caveat that. Okay, coronavirus is different, a different story. But pre-coronavirus, the people that doesn't pay their mortgage for months on end, a year on end, whatever, and they get letters from the bank that are saying, we're gonna take your house back, we're threatening you, blah, blah, blah. That person is the type of person that likes to stick their head in the sand and just pretend like their problems are gonna go away if they do nothing like ignore it. That is not really true. But you have to understand that mentality of that person is if they just pretend like their problems aren't there, they might go away. So those are the type of people that you're dealing with. Now, not everyone's obviously like that, but you have to understand some people have that mentality. So when you're approaching these people, you have to approach them understanding those types of things and how to speak to them the best way possible. So with that being said, let me give you an idea of how a typical pitch would go inside of our business. Now, I have virtual assistants that make these calls for me because I don't want to cold call anymore at this stage in the game. But I train them all and make sure that they're executing correctly. So you're gonna call them, you're looking for a particular person. Say the person's name is John, okay? So they pick up the phone, hello, I'm gonna say, hi, my name is Logan, is this John? And they're gonna be like, yes or no. And if they say, no, this is not John, I'm gonna be like, oh, my apologies. Do you happen to know anything about the property that's located at 123 Main Street? You always wanna ask if they know anything about the property because they may be John's relative, they may be John in the first place pretending not to be John because he wants to see why you're calling and what the deal is. So, you want to kind of throw that out there. Then when they see the address, sometimes they change their tone and they ask, well, why are you calling about that property? And at this point is where you say the most important part of the whole entire script, which you have to get out of your mouth quickly because you have a very limited attention span to grab them and suck them in. So the one thing you want to learn how to say more than anything is, yeah, the reason why I was calling was about your property at 123 Main Street. And we actually recently purchased some properties in that area, and I was seeing if maybe you would be interested in a premium cash offer for us to purchase your home that could possibly put thousands of dollars in your pocket. Let's assume that they say, yeah, sure. What price are you willing to pay? It's typically what they'll say. Then what you want to do is transition them into asking questions about the condition of the property. So, great, that's awesome. I'm glad that you'd be interested. can you tell me a little bit more about the condition of the property? Like how many bedrooms and bathrooms do you have and what's the general condition? And then just start walking them through the part of the script where you'll see there's questions about the condition of the home. I don't need to explain that part to you. It's pretty self-explanatory. Just make sure that you get all the information that you need and then wrap the call up by finishing and saying, great, you're gonna take a look at some comps and you'll make sure to give them a call back with you and your partner and what you wanna do with the property within a day or maybe the next day. Always get a time commitment from them of when is a good time that they can chat. So that gives them some level of commitment to talk again. Now that's best case scenario. The typical scenarios are when people are gonna say, no, I'm not interested. I'm trying to stay in the home. I'm trying to do a loan modification. I'm trying to live in this fantasy world where the bank's not gonna foreclose on me and they'll just let me stay here forever. That's gonna be a typical objection. So then what you wanna do is when you get that no, you wanna transition into saying, okay, I completely understand why you'd wanna stay in the home, but let me ask you this, have you come up with a solution to solve your foreclosure issue? Because I would hate for the bank to take it when I'm willing to pay cash for it and give you some money to allow you to benefit from the sale of the property. And then that's gonna spark a conversation about what their plan is and what they've been doing to deal with the foreclosure. They might be trying to do a loan modification, which your job is to kind of dismantle those things. And although I talk about this in depth inside of my Mogul business model, what you need to know, the most simple way to handle those objections is just to say something like this. Look, I totally understand, and if I was in your shoes, I'd want to stay in the home too. But you would definitely be doing yourself a disservice by not at least seeing what we would be able to pay for the property just in case you need to use us as a plan B for that plan A not actually working the way that you anticipate. Because we don't see a lot of loan modifications get done today because the bank knows the value of the property is more than what you owe. It's a tough conversation. You just want to kind of get in the door and state something along the lines of utilizing your cash offer as a plan B. And then once you're able to get in the door, you can kind of talk to them a little bit further about how maybe your solution is a better one, because at least when you buy the property, it's a guarantee that their debts are going to be paid. It's not a maybe you'll get approved for a loan modification or maybe you'll get accepted for these other solutions. They don't know that. They know that if someone buys the property and pays off the mortgage, that they are in fact going to be out of foreclosure. So sometimes you just got to go through that. Now, once you dismantle those objections, then you circle back into, again, asking about information about the condition of the property. All right, so that's the main script. If you have any questions, you can comment below. I'll make sure to answer them, but you got to go in the description in order to download the main script that you guys are going to want to use. All right, so I'll try to make this short and sweet. But when you're in the home, you really have one main objective. And your objective is to build a great relationship with that seller, get them to love you, build an awesome relationship with them, build rapport, ask them questions about their life. So the way I always do it is when I walk through the home and I'm allowing them to give me a tour of the property, I'm taking pictures of everything. And what I like to do is look around the property for things that are maybe common things we can talk about. Maybe you can resonate with, maybe it's a sports team or a place that you've traveled to. You got to find some level of common ground that you have with these people and strike up conversations. At the end of the day, they have to be able to trust you to acquire their property. And so it's very key that you spend a lot of time doing that. You know, there's a lot of people that go in there and obviously you want to point out certain expensive repairs. You want to make sure you get pictures of all the expensive things, the electric panel, if there's, well, you may not be able to get pictures of the plumbing, but get an idea of if the plumbing's working, maybe have some water run, electrical plumbing, and then sometimes you can't get pictures of the roof, but you should be able to find out the age of the roof. And then you want to point out certain things of, you know, oh, this kitchen would be $10,000 to renovate or what have you. I'm not a big believer in using the, you know, approach that a lot of flippers will use of basically just going in there and beating them up on how much it would be to, you know, repair this place and just get them to agree to a super low price. Your biggest thing you want the seller to understand is you're only interested in doing deals that are a win-win scenario. It's a win for them, you're solving a problem for them, you're giving them the amount of money that they can live with and that they're going to be happy with, you're maybe helping them move. In my cases, what we do with our deals is we pay for all the closing costs. We also pay for any costs of moving. So I'll actually just have my guys, move stuff out for them. We'll take it exactly how it is. So if they want to leave junk there, that's fine. And then we also, help with any other hurdles that the sellers may be going through. If they need to find a new place, I hook them up with one of my realtors that will help them for either a rental or a new property. I hook them up with some of the lenders that we use that can help them get a new mortgage after we close the property. All sorts of different stuff. We want to help and provide and take that off of their plate. So ultimately, again, you want to stress only win-win deals. And then when you get to the point where you're ready to make an offer and you have an idea of what you can lock this property up for, then at that point you want to sit them down typically, but if you have to stand, that's okay. Sometimes you're in a situation where you can't get people to sit down and say to them, hey, what would work for you? What are you trying to get for this property? What would make you happy and accomplish your goals? And have an understanding of what that is, and then craft an offer based on what their goals are and make sure that those numbers can work for both of you. Sometimes you may need to explain the challenges that you have as a flipper and why the numbers that they're asking don't really make a lot of sense, but the number that could make sense is this, and here's how that could work. All right, so that's the in-home appointment. A couple key things to live by for an in-home appointment. I would dress somewhat professional. When I was first starting and I was younger, I was scared that people wouldn't take me seriously because of my age. I was only 23 at the time, so I would go into a property with a button-down shirt, sometimes a full suit that made it look like I was the guy that could definitely buy this property. But now, as I've gotten older, I've realized that I don't really need to impress these people by wearing a suit, and oftentimes I've never seen a real estate flipper in a suit. So if you see a flipper at a property, most of the time they're in a normal shirt with jeans on, and honestly, if you can just have an intelligent conversation, but I do believe a good, collared shirt or a button-up shirt makes you look professional, and just dress generally looking like you can actually buy this person's house. Don't dress like a freaking hobo. All right, that should be going without saying, I think. All right, so next thing we're going to talk about is once you have the property, you'll lock it up under contract utilizing a purchase and sale agreement, which you can also get in the link in the description, which I will include with the scripts for you guys. Super simple, one-page purchase and sale agreement. All right, next thing is buyers. What are you going to do and how do you handle that? All right, so look guys, I decided to take this conversation to the kitchen because quite frankly, I'm starving and I need to eat. But let's talk about buyers. First of all, where do you find buyers? Everyone always talks about, how do I build a buyers list? How am I gonna sell these properties to people if I ain't even got people that are buyers gonna buy my properties? Well look, it's not that hard. In 2020, you can literally build a buyer's list in like 2 hours just by doing basically 3 websites. One, go to biggerpockets.com, set up a free account. You can search in the search bar by area and by people that their title is. So like title, flipper, landlord, search by your market. You can find all the accounts of people that are flippers or landlords in your market that are on BiggerPockets. Shoot them a message on BP and say, hey, you want to add their information to your buyers list. After a couple of hours, you'll have a bunch of people responding and you'll have emails and phone numbers. Some of them, if you check their actual account, it will show you in their account their email and contact information. Sometimes you don't have to message them. You just put that information into a database like MailChimp or something like that, and you can email them your properties when you get them. Second website I would recommend, Connected Investors. It's also a great place to find financing if you need to do so. Connected Investors, build a free account. You can search based on area, and you can also search based on what the title is in people's name. Same process, different website, rinse and repeat, boom. Now you got a bunch of buyers. The third, and probably the most effective way, truthfully, is there are Facebook groups specifically for wholesale properties in your area. In investment properties in your area. Go on those Facebook groups, join them. Go through the comments, see who's interested in deals. They're gonna put their email in there. You rip those emails, put them in your database, reach out to those people, send a message, let them know that you're also getting your own deals and you're interested in selling them to them. Boom, that's a buyer's list. Now, what's more important than building a buyer's list is treating your buyers how they need to be treated. Because let me tell you something, some buyers, most buyers is liars. They liars and they cheat and they scam. And they're going to try and take your deal by going to the seller. Those people need to be taken into a field and shot in the face, like what they used to do to cows that couldn't make milk. Those are assholes, and you don't want to deal with them. So, there's an appropriate way that you can handle these types of buyers. First and foremost is when you bring a buyer to a property, you need to get on the phone with them, not message them. Get on the phone with them and let them know how your process works. You need to ask them, have you ever bought from a wholesaler before? Yes or no? Are you familiar with assignment of contracts? Have you ever purchased real estate via an assignment of contract? Number 3, have you ever done a double close? The answer to those questions will gauge whether this buyer has dealt with wholesalers before or not. Now, then you want to walk them through your process, which is very simple. When I take you through the home, you are to say nothing to the seller or talk about anything to do with price and money. Be firm. Do not let these buyers handle you like a little child, because they will if they can. So be firm in the way that your business works. You have other people that you can sell properties to, and if they're not going to play by your rules, who controls the deal, then guess what? They're not going to get your deals. It's that simple. So you can ask questions about what is wrong with this particular thing. You can say, hey, seller, how long ago did this wall happen to be a giant gaping hole in it? How long has this been leaking? You can ask those types of questions, but you may not say anything about price or buying the property. It's pretty simple. You can ask them if they're familiar with how processes work with wholesaling, all right? Your job as a wholesaler is to manage your relationship with the seller and the relationship you have with the end buyer, and they is to be apart, okay? Very simple. Now, also, you want to collect at least a $2,500 minimum, if not $5,000, non-refundable earnest money deposit. After they have seen their place, they should have a decent inspection at that point. If they're prepared to take the deal down, the earnest money is non-refundable, so long as you can produce free and clear title, which you will see it states that in the assignment contract that I'm going to give you in the description, totally for free, guys. For free. Come on, man. What do you want? I'm going to give it to you. All right, so that is the most crucial part of dealing with the buyers. Now, the buyers are almost always going to try to negotiate you, so I would suggest putting a price that has a little bit of fluff money in there, whether that's $5,000 or what have you, because buyers almost never will pay 100% of what you're asking unless you underprice the deal, and then you know you left money on the table, because if they don't try to negotiate you, your price is too low. I can guarantee it. All right? So that's buyers. If you need me to go over the assignment contract, if you have any questions about it, it is literally very self-explanatory. Remember, you are the assignor as the wholesaler. So your business name is the assignor and the person purchasing it is the assignee. Okay? You keep those two things straight and it's pretty simple. They are buying the rights to your contract that you've already signed with the seller. So they also will typically need a copy of your purchase and sale agreement with the seller, but you can absolutely black out the price so that they don't see what you get it under contract for. They will understand what money you're making when it comes down to closing, but by that time, they're really not going to back out of the transaction because they would lose a good chunk of earnest money, which is also why it's important to collect a good chunk of money, because if they back out of that transaction and make you look like a weasel, you want it to taste like piss and vinegar in their wallet. They're gonna lose a good chunk of money, and you want them to feel that burn, because they made you look like an idiot. So, anyways, that's dealing with buyers. Let's roll. All right, so look, here's the deal. I know a lot of you can watch videos on comping, and you should. You should go watch videos on comping because you really need to understand how comps work. I'm going to give you some quick tips that I think are rules of thumbs you should live by. You should learn how to comp properties well before you really start making solid offers. Just spend a little bit of time. It's not that hard. Here's my biggest recommendations. The things you really need to pay attention to when comping. The construction of the property, okay? Is it concrete block? Is it wood frame? Do you live in an area where concrete block houses are worth more money than wood frame homes, like in Florida? You need to be aware of that, okay? Look at that. Look at the other properties that have sold within 6 months that are in your same area. What is the construction? Because that will make the value of the property different. What is the year the home was built? Is it a newer home, older home? These are factors you need to consider. And my last piece of recommendation is, please, dear God, do yourself a favor and actually look at the pictures of the properties that have sold. There is a reason why they sell for certain prices. And sometimes it's because they have way nicer finishes. Sometimes they have pools. Sometimes they look like shit. You need to understand what are the reasons why those prices are the way that they are, okay? Don't just look at when you print a comp sheet, or say you have a realtor that prints a comp sheet for you, they'll give you like this grid view of like, this is the address, this is the specs, this is the price. No photos, just the grid. Don't look at that. It's good to figure out the average days on market and the average, sorry, it's hard to focus with food in front of me, but the average price per square foot. That's what I'm looking for. Good for calculating average price per square foot, but you need to understand the actual finishes and pictures of what they look like and the price that they got corresponding with that. And can your property get and achieve that based on if they used similar finishes? Now, you always want to don't assume the best case scenario. Assume a little bit less than the best case scenario, because what's going to happen is you're going to go to a flipper and you're going to say, I think the ARV is $1 million. And they're going to be like, bro, that's so high of a comp. Like, that's the absolute best case scenario on earth if like God came down and impregnated my house and somehow made it worth more money. No, you want to give a conservative value of what it may be worth, not the fairy tale version, because flippers, they don't like when you give them fairy tale numbers. They need real, solid data numbers. So that's my advice. Learn to do that, and you'll be a good comper. And your flippers that buy properties from you as a wholesaler will love you and respect you a lot more than the other guy that's giving ridiculous numbers on the property. Oh, I didn't see you there. Hi, my name is Logan, and I'm here to tell you about closing. Yes, closing. You see, a lot of people think that the biggest struggle in the deal is finding the deal, negotiating with the seller, getting it under contract, and getting it sold to your end buyer. But in all reality, majority of the time, closing the property gets the biggest amount of stress to get it actually closed. And I think a lot of it is because you're so close to touching your money, but yet you're so far away. Because if it doesn't close, you get a big whopping $0, which I don't recommend making $0. It's the least invigorating thing ever. So, let's talk about it. Number one, I would highly suggest finding yourself a good closing attorney if you're in a state that only closes real estate with attorneys, or a good title agent if you can deal with title agents. When you call your title agent, number one, ask them, do they deal with investors? Are they familiar with assignment of contracts? Are they familiar with double closings? Are they familiar with blind HUDs where there's a HUD for the seller and a HUD for the buyer? where the seller only sees things that are pertinent to them and the buyer sees all the things that are pertinent to them. You want to know, are they familiar with that? A lot of times you can ask other flippers and investors that maybe you started talking with and networking with what title company they like to use. Also, you want to understand their settlement fees and if they're expensive or if they will give you a reduced settlement fee if you run multiple transactions per year through them, since you buy a lot of properties throughout the year. So those are the things that you want, and you want to work closely with your title agent, and you want to have them send you all the information and all the updates from the property. And once you have it, you can make a decision on if everything is good and you need to send over the information to the seller, or if things are bad and you need to go deal with some title issues. Let your seller know what the issues are and then educate them on how you're going to be able to solve it. A lot of times there are title issues in these types of properties. That's why you're buying them for such a good price. They come with headaches. Anything that makes a lot of money is going to come with stress, headaches, and probably gray hairs like this. So, with that being said, let your title agent tell you what are the things that you need to do to solve the liens, title, so on and so forth. A lot of municipal liens, you can call up the city and actually get those negotiated down to something that's called the hard cost of what it would cost for them to release the lien. And they will have to send you a lien release and the amount of money that they will accept in order for the transaction to go through. There's all sorts of different scenarios in a closing that can happen. If you're dealing with foreclosures, like in this case I taught you to deal with, you're going to want to familiarize yourself with the difference between a payoff and a mortgage balance. A lot of times sellers think they know their outstanding mortgage balance, but it is not everything that will be owed in order for you to buy that property. Because once they enter into foreclosure status, the bank now has legal representation, aka attorneys, and those attorneys charge their fees on top of all the bank balances. Plus you have accruing interest, late fees, charges, all these different things that go on top of their mortgage balance, which makes up generally a much larger payoff. So, what you need is the payoff, and you can have your title agent request the payoff from the attorneys that represent the seller's lender, and I would start there. It's the number one most important thing that you need to request in the transaction, because sometimes it can take 7 to 14 days to get back from the lender, and sometimes their payoff is a lot more, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 more than what they thought it would be to pay it off. And that could blow up your entire deal right there. So I would always suggest starting with the payoff. Once you have the payoff, then you can understand if you're in the clear and you can still make money with this deal, or if you need to adjust things accordingly. The way that I typically structure my deals with the seller is I tell them that I'm going to give them a certain dollar amount above the payoff that they get to put in their pocket, assuming that the numbers work that way. And if the payoff comes back higher than a certain number, then that dollar amount is subject to change, okay? So that's a good way to protect yourself. So payoff's important, the liens are important. You got to spend time in closing, and what you will realize is that if you have multiple deals going on, the closing actually becomes pretty big full-time job. And that's when you need to start expanding outwards of people handling your prospecting calls and following up with sellers, so that all you're doing is focusing on getting properties closed and dealing with your in buyers to get them into escrow to close them, as well as going to the appointments to lock up the contracts with the seller in the first place. So I hope that made sense to you. You really got to focus on closing, and ultimately, no matter what I tell you and educate you on, you're going to come up with issues that are going to be unique to you and your deal. That is closing. Now what we're going to do is basically you're going to get ready to close. You're to the point where you're ready to make your big check. You've put in a lot of work, a lot of hours, a lot of time, several weeks, and now it's time for you to get the money that you've worked super hard for. And let's talk about closing day. I excite! Very nice! Yes, that is what I say on my favorite day of every year, of every month. And no, it's not Christmas. It's closing day. A day far superior to Christmas because you get the one thing that you actually want, a big pile of monies. Couple of rules of thumbs to live by, guys. Number one, I would highly suggest if you have a buyer that's cool and stress-free, not a lot of them are, but if you have one, I would suggest getting the wire the day before closing, so that way closing day, everything is a lot less stressful and seamless, and you just have the buyer are signing their closing documents, the seller signing their closing documents. Everything's easy, but the amount of times where closing day has not been full of stress and making me question why I even exist in this world basically is a fraction of the amount of times that I've closed a real estate property. Most of the time, you're going to be frantically running around, calling your buyer, be like, are you going to the bank? When are you sending your wire? Did you send the wire yet? Blah, blah, blah. Ah! All that shit. And truthfully, you really got to build a great relationship with your buyer and trust that they're going to send the wire on time when they say they're going to send it. That's the only thing I can really recommend for closing day. Get the wire in as early as possible. Like 9 a.m. is awesome, and then you have the whole day to figure out getting all the documents done. So, I always recommend having the seller sign last, okay? That way you know the buyer's already signed, the wire's already in, the sellers are coming, because the sellers typically want to leave the closing table with their cashier's check or proceeds from closing if they get any. Now, sometimes they'll accept a wire, just depends on the seller, and sometimes buyer and seller are not even located in the same place that you're closing. So what do you do in that case? Well, the buyer is going to need to get closing documents overnighted to them, which your title company should take care of. They'll have to get things notarized, signed, executed, and sent back, and they should get a tracking number of those things being sent back to the title company. Lastly, the seller is going to have the same situation. They're going to get an overnight envelope with the documents. They got to go to a notary. They got to sign all those documents, put it back in the prepaid overnight envelope slip, and send it back with tracking info. Once the title company receives those documents back, which will be the next day or the day after, then basically closing can occur, and you're just going to need to make sure that your end buyer sends the wire, and then they will have official closing documents sent out to everyone, and the proceeds and the wires will go where they're supposed to go. I'm just telling you, in my experience, it's best to try to coordinate the wire as early as possible from your end buyer, because remember, those end buyers are, in theory, they think that you're the buyer and you assigned your rights, which you're legally allowed to do. But a lot of times if they screw up this closing part, it falls back on you and makes you look like you're, the baboon, the idiot, right? So let's talk a little bit about nightmare closings and what happens if your buyer doesn't close or doesn't send the money, or what happens if your seller looks at the HUD and they see that it's in a different name and they ask you questions. How do you deal with that? What should you do? Well, let's first address the second one. So say that the seller sees that the entity is in a different entity than you signed the contract in, and they're asking. Pretty easy to explain. Every time you actually take title in a property, you take it in a different entity, and a lot of times you partner with other investors and they need to put it in an entity that they control, and your job is to help them secure that property. And a lot of times you will collect a fee up front for partnering with them on the property and bringing them a deal, and then basically your job is to manage the property and make sure that the construction goes as planned, and you get that fee subtracted from when the property is resold on the back end. So that's one way that you can handle it. You can also say things like, I always take title in a different entity. It's no big deal. It doesn't affect our transaction. We just do that for liability purposes in order to have, because we have a lot of different properties, they're each in a different entity. That reduces some liability on our end. Okay, and then if they were, which by the way, that pretty much never happens. It's never even happened to me. But normally when you say that, everyone's just so excited to get their money, they're going to sign the closing documents and get paid. The other question is, what happens if your buyer doesn't send the wire? Well, you kind of just got to go with the flow. If you need to extend closing because the buyer needs another day, then you'll need to get an extension. You'll need to let them know that in this case, you were using some private money with an investor that invests with properties with you, and you were planning on using a good chunk of their funds to close, and they actually were not able to send it today, but they're going to be able to send it by tomorrow. There was a miscommunication, something to that effect. But I would really try to control your closings so that you can really try to create the best outcome. Every now and then bad things happen, and you just have to be honest and explain to them what's going on. And sometimes people need a little bit more time. Sometimes there's miscommunications. You just got to go with the flow and answer the questions the best that you can based on what's happening in the situation. All right, guys, so I know it's been quite a bit of a journey to explain to you how to wholesale for the cheapest way possible from A to Z, which is the part where you get paid. I hope this was explanatory, a good enough explanation for you and tutorial on how you should wholesale and the way to do it for the least amount of money. Now, obviously, this is just scratching the surface of everything that's involved in wholesaling and building a decent business. How do you do this in 2020 where this business is extremely competitive, and how do you actually get good, viable deals? Whether you want to take them down yourself, you want to rent them out, you want to wholesale them, the opportunities and your options are endless. But the most important thing is you need to be able to get the property for a reasonable price in order to make it a solid investment. And most importantly, not be spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on marketing, like using direct mail, which we don't do any of anymore, and how you're not enslaved to doing property deals every single day. I started wholesaling, so I'm eternally grateful because it got me my start, got me my first bit of money, but it was just a stepping stone for me to basically take the money that I had made from profitable real estate investments and get into other businesses in which I've gotten into now, like buying my first franchise and also looking at some businesses to acquire. Wholesaling is fun, but it's also incredibly stressful, and it's also a lot of times a really hard business to scale. So, if you want to understand the full process of the business model, the simplified business model that I'm running right now in 2020 that's actively getting me deals every single month, even while I'm working on other projects, then you can click the link in my description. The Mogul business model is literally me teaching you everything that we do for our business model, step by step, just kind of like this video, but way more in depth with all the parts of the puzzle. And it's totally up to you. I offer it at one of the cheapest prices that I think is out there for a real estate investing course, and you're more than welcome to check it out. If you have any questions, you can shoot me a message. You can also post in the comments. And once again, guys, thanks for stopping by. I'm going to be dropping, my goal is 2 videos a week, and for people that comment, I'm going to run a promotion of, not a promotion, but a giveaway for mentoring, where I will pick one person every month to mentor them directly from the comments, and my personal mentoring is valued at about $5,000 from what other students have paid me to mentor them in real estate investing. So thank you so much for stopping by. As always, I appreciate each and every one of you, and don't forget, the one thing you need to do every week is be a mogul. Make it happen. I'm out.